Hey everyone, it's Dylan from the Black Forest Wood Company, and this week we're going to be showing you our process of creating an extending dining table. So this client selected 2 slabs of our grafted walnut, which are quite unique in that they have 2 species of wood in a single slab. So you'll notice in some of these shots, the one half of the slab is lighter than the other half of the slab, and that's because we have English walnut and Claro walnut in a single piece. The reason they do that is because they plant Claro walnut in the root because it grows big quickly, but it doesn't produce the type of walnuts they want to grow commercially, so then they graft on English walnut to the top because it produces the kind of walnuts they want. However, these trees only produce walnuts for about 75 years, so then the orchards get cut down. The trees usually get burned and then the orchards get replanted, but in this case, we were able to salvage some of those pieces and turn them into a dining table. If you've been watching our channel before, something you've probably realized that's become quite popular is the use of a base layer in our pours. So what we do for that is we pour an opaque color, in this case we're doing a solid black pour, on the bottom portion of the table, and it does a few things. It hides the visibility of the plates that are going to be used for mounting. In this case, it's going to hide some of the inserts that are going to get used for the actual extension hardware that's going on this table. And it also just provides a really clean look in that you're not able to see through to the floor, and that all you see is the edge of that wood left in the remaining, let's say, 2 inches of the pour. So what the boys are doing right now, they've got I think 3 buckets or 2 buckets mixed up of our Black Forest Deep resin, and then we're just adding a very generous amount of black pigment in, because like I mentioned, we've got mounting hardware and plates going underneath here, so the last thing we want is to be able to see the outline of those plates when this is all put together. Once the base layer is cured, we like to quickly sand it up just to scuff the surface so we can get something good for the next layer to hold on to. The other way you can go about it is letting the resin just cure halfway before pouring this next top layer. But in this case, we needed to ensure a proper thickness of that base layer because we have threaded inserts going into it. So we wanted to let it fully cure first, and we opted to sand it before pouring this layer. Then after the piece is cured for 7 days, we can get it demolded from the form and onto our Avid CNC machine for flattening. So although we have a very big heavy-duty CNC machine, you might notice that we're still only taking about 1 millimeter or maybe 2 millimeters off in a single pass at a time. And that's kind of the maximum for this machine. You know, we could maybe work it slightly harder, but kind of as a general rule for longevity of our equipment, we like to underwork them to their potential just to make sure we can get the absolute most out of them. Then once the piece has been flattened on the CNC, we can send it through our drum sander to take those marks out. This is where you can really see why we want to get that new machine. Like I mentioned in llast week's video, we're picking up a planer sander combination machine from SCM. And that's going to allow us to skip the CNC flattening step and combine it in a single machine with the sanding. Once we've got the piece taken to its final thickness, then we can use our track saw to go ahead and cut it down to its final size. So like I've mentioned again many times before, in order to get the cleanest cut with the track saw, it's always best to go in multiple passes. With these track saws, we found if you try to make it all in one cut, you're just going to bog down the saw, you're going to end up burning your wood, and you might even get some deflection on the blade. And we've even had it bad enough where we've had to cut the table smaller than we originally planned. One of the most labor-intensive parts of the process that we usually don't film that much of, simply because it's very boring, is the filling process. So even with our deep resin, and even though we do an overpour to try and hit all the voids in a single shot, once we flatten off that excess resin, there's almost always still some small voids and imperfections left in the table. So what we do for the first round of fills is we outline all the voids with silicone, and then we use our Black Forest Coat thin resin, which only takes 24 hours to cure, and that hits the majority of the larger voids. And we're not going to bore you with the whole process, but even after that, we go along with a super glue, sometimes even a shellac, and there's oftentimes 5 or 6 more rounds of fills to get it completely perfect. Once the fills have been finished, then we like to do a 2mm bevel on the outside edges of the piece. This just kind of helps to soften everything up so you don't have that sharp finish or sharp feeling on the outside of the table. And it's also something we give our clients the option of. Sometimes they even go for a 1/2 inch round over. Then what you're seeing John do here right now is carefully routing out the recesses that are going to go on the top of the X base for the mounting plates. The way that we like to mount our bases is we screw a steel plate into the top of the base itself, and then we use threaded inserts to fasten that plate into the underside of the table. So now on to the actual extension portion of this dining table. We've done this once before in a video, and the way that we like to do it is using this extruded aluminum T-slot channel, and it happens to perfectly fit the head of one of our threaded inserts. So we get it cut to length, we sand off all the burrs, and then we're just spray painting it black so that it matches the finish on the base that's going underneath. And what you're seeing the boys do here right now is lay out some threaded inserts so that we can have the heads of those bolts sticking up. And then you'll notice that these extruded aluminum channels can be slid perfectly over the heads of those bolts. So here you can see how the heads of those bolts are sticking up, and it allows that channel to slide on perfectly. We then drill a hole in the top of that channel so we can get an Allen key through the channel and tighten that bolt so it holds the extruded aluminum in place. And then we have the same setup on the extending part of the table, or the leaf, which can slide into place. And then the same thing, we just use an Allen key to tighten that up, and it holds everything perfectly. Then it's off to our spray finishers Gecko to apply the 2-component acrylic urethane finish to this table. This is what we found to be the most durable finishing option for our clients. It does, however, form a slight film over the wood, so it's not exactly the most natural looking and feeling product. To the untrained eye, you know, let's say someone who isn't a woodworker and doesn't finish lots of tables, you might hardly be able to notice the difference. So it's not like it's this really ugly thick film that's formed on there, but when you touch it, when you're in person, that's when you can really feel the difference. On something that's done with an oil-based finish, you really pick up a lot of detail that's in that grain, where something with a spray finish like this is a lot more smooth across the top. But it does have the benefit of basically no maintenance and being impervious to nearly all liquids. This particular finish we're using is even resistant to sulfuric acid being spilled on it. So most clients are never going to encounter that, but should it happen, they're covered. Then we're moving on to spraying the same finish on the extending portion of the table. You'll notice there's not a whole lot of wood in these, but we did use the offcuts from the main dining table to create these leaves. So what it just ensures continuity between the grain and the color of the piece throughout the whole table. And then after we've picked these pieces up from Jekko and we've allowed them to cure for 1 week, we can come along and put our Black Forest ceramic coating on them. You can see it makes a huge difference in the way that this piece of wood looks. It's almost like putting a filter over the wood and just improving the overall look of it, but you also get a lot of added protection in terms of liquids and scratch resistance. One thing that also sets our product apart from others is that we have a water-based formula. We're non-toxic, whereas other products on the market are solvent-based and toxic. This client opted for one of our signature X bases to go on their table. This is likely our most popular base. I'd have to check and see the actual numbers on it, but we have so many of these bases that go through our shop. Number one, they look very clean. They give a nice modern aesthetic. But number two, they're very functional in that you can fit chairs all the way around the table without really having any seating arrangements where someone's going to be hitting their knees on the base. So that's what clients really like it for, is they can have nice big dinner parties and no one's going to be complaining about being uncomfortable. So you saw us spray painting the hardware earlier, and I was mentioning that we were wanting to match it to the base. So this is the blackened finish that we're applying to the base here. We like to use the General Finishes black wood stain. It is water-based, so before we put our oil-based top coat on it, we like to let it cure for a few days just to ensure that all that water's evaporated. But we find it does the best job at just giving that really rich, intense black color. And for those of you who have been wondering, yes, Charlie is still here. Like I've mentioned before, he's kind of taken more of a management role, so he's just kind of ordering everyone around, and if I'm being honest, he just sits on his butt in the office a lot. And then this is what I was mentioning earlier about how we fasten the base to the table itself. So we like to use big long screws to fasten those steel plates into the top of the base, and they're 1/4 inch thick steel too, so they're quite substantial. And then once we've got that fastened into the base itself, then we can get the base flipped over and fasten that onto the underside of the table using our threaded inserts.
Yep, lower down, lower down. Okay, a little bit. We're good? Good? We're good.
So on the underside of the table, you could see all of our threaded inserts sticking out to allow that extruded aluminum channel to slide in. So we first slide the piece onto the table itself, then we slide the extension onto the channel after it's sticking out from the end. And at that point, you would go underneath your table with your Allen key and tighten up all of those bolts. As you can see, Garrett is very excited about this, that we got it to work. And here's a look at the finished product. So you can see those pieces of wood in the extensions match the color of the main dining table perfectly. And we've just got this gorgeous, continuous look throughout the whole piece.
Is this Katy Perry? It's one of my faves, man. Perfect.
We do also get the pleasure of delivering this piece to our client out in Kelowna, so that's what you're going to see us do next. We're going to get everything wrapped up and we'll get this piece set up in our client's home. And here we are in our client's gorgeous home on the lake in Kelowna. Brad right now is getting the foam cut off to expose the underside of the table. We didn't unfortunately get any of their reaction on film, but the clients were pretty wowed at even the bottom side of the table. So then from here, all we had to do was get it lifted onto that base, get our threaded inserts installed into the bottom, and then we're off back to Calgary. So a huge thank you to our client for giving us the opportunity to create such a beautiful piece. You can really see here the incredible character that's in these pieces of wood, and we couldn't have asked for better clients to work with. So thank you again to them. Thank you to everyone who chose to watch this video and tune in. We appreciate you guys very much, and it really helps us out if you can leave a comment on this video and let us know what you guys thought, and we will see you in 2 weeks.